So week 5 in CIT28. It's so funny. I teach 28 and 82, so my brain's always having to go one, flip it over, whatever. I like brain challenges. They're fun. All right, so this week I'm going to cover a few topics, go over some things about this week's work, and then we'll get into the graded part of this week. We're at the end of the month. We've already rolled into February at this point, but it is good for you to check your code space usage because January, because we didn't start until, right, like the 11th, you have a partial month. And the reason that's good to know is remember, if you haven't upgraded your account, and I have links for all this, you have 120 hours. Now, I'm guessing most of you are probably within that range, but if you're not, you need to consider like maybe upgrading. And even if you are, upgrading your account to a verified educational account actually has some other benefits, but specifically related to code space. So it takes you from 120 to 160, right? So I've given you usage for how to find it. So this actually gives you the process for how to go into your own GitHub and find it. Consider verifying to increase, right? And optimize. And I've been saying this, but I haven't been as good lately about when I'm in a code space right before I end the video saying stop the code space. So hopefully this is something you're becoming more used to. I've talked to several of you and it seems like you have, which is great, but I just want to make sure. All right, so I have some good news. One about the tutor. We have a confirmed tutor, but they're going through the process. It's their first time tutoring, which they took my class last semester and did excellent. So I'm so excited to have and his name's Hong, and he will be on availability hopefully by the end of this week, which this is actually week 4 in the RL in the real world. But I will again. I had hoped to post before now, but that's the way things always take a little longer sometimes than expected. But the other good news is there's no new workflows this week, right? So the workflows that you have gotten exposed to now, the POE, the proof of work, the POW, the proof of effort, POE, proof of work, and the Git workflows are all going to be intact this week, nothing new. But so that's the good news, right? And the thing I would say, and this is getting into this part of what we're going to do is I had broken the cyber chase into 2 parts. So we're doing the last part this week. And I just looked over my instructions and I published published them. And so it's the same instruction, but I did do a couple of heads up on the item. I didn't do a new video because you can refer back to the other one, but it's the same process. The couple things I saw was that students were either not using the backticks correctly. That's important because that way it's easier to read what you tried. And then making sure you commit after each problem, okay? And right, running your, the POE process. Now, the thing I would say here, and we're going to do a graded part of this week around this, like when you read the problem, if you're immediately going over to get help without giving yourself the time to actually try, you're not helping your learning process. Now, I'm not to say there's not a part of learning that comes out of getting help. I'm not saying that. But your ability to be in the uncomfortableness of not knowing an answer and being willing to work through it is a skill, okay? And think about this, and that's where I actually get to here, is that part of this class, 25% of it, is actually you doing a technical interview with me. And what would this look like is something like what you've done both in the problem sets and in the reviews. So that's why I layer this course the way I do, and I've taken what I learned last semester and I'm implementing it this semester in the hopes that those experiences of doing technical interviews, because if you're in a technical field, you're probably going to get a technical interview where somebody actually asks you to do something live in front of them, and it can be nerve-wracking. I get that. It's not the intent, but it is sometimes part of the side effects of that. One way you can help yourself with that is actually to come see me. Students who actually come see me on a more regular basis, or just even just to come chat with me, often feel a little more comfortable in the interview because it's not the first time they've seen me, so to speak. These interviews will start after week 9. I'll talk about them as we move forward. Okay, so going back to here. So this is all tied to the proof of effort. I really want to see like your thinking process. Like as a matter of fact, if you're somebody who can just read the problem and immediately go to the solution, take some conscious like here's how I would write the first part of the query and second part and just give that documentation some validity because it's just something I take into account, and you'll see me following up questions if I feel like that's not being well documented. Okay, so on the reviews, I got an interesting question about the reviews. Two people have asked me now. They're like, yes, I want you to do 2 attempts. And I actually might change it up a little bit. I'm doing this in one of my coding classes, and I may implement something here. We'll see, because that's actually the next thing I do after I get this done. So I go through and look at how I'm going to set the review up. But I got an interesting question because I said you need to do 2 attempts, and somebody said, "Can I just ask for more questions?" You can. I'm thinking I'll let you do that, but just know the longer you go with the chat session, sometimes the chat session will give harder questions based on it may. And again, this is personalized learning because based on the way you've answered the questions, it will vary then questions as you go forward, or it may say, oh, well, this student has this comprehension that may go outside of the realm. Now, I've instructed the prompt not to, but even with me instructing it not to, it may. So doing 2 attempts or doing 10 and then doing 10 more, or 15, could definitely lead you into some territory where you may have questions with SQL commands we haven't covered. Now, by the way, that's not a bad thing either, because you can also look at the example that it's given you. And I think the prompt right now for the review you all are doing is actually working pretty well, where it gives you the chance to write it, gives you feedback, and another attempt to do it. So interesting. You can, but I don't necessarily recommend. I don't even know if I'd say recommend. I just want you to know how it works, I guess is what I'd say. Okay, we're going to do this week with the Cyber Chase 2, similar to what we did with part 1, because I think it worked well, is that for those of you that want to take a break, I think this week you have to write 3 queries before you take a break. And what I do is even if you take a break, I go in and look and give you feedback. So that you will know, right? And the other thing is if you, from the time you submit that you're taking a break, you actually go in and finish, tell me in the submission that you actually have submitted this and you want full review. Because remember, and actually this is kind of just what has evolved. For those students who submitted all of it on Monday night, I went through and graded. I'm giving those students a chance to fix something by Thursday night. So there's a benefit to doing them all because you get that full review. But if you're waiting until Thursday night to do it and I grade Friday morning, then you don't get that cycle of review, which to me, that's also where we learn, right? Okay, so FYI, string versus integer in SQL. So this is it's called an inconsistent data type usage. Now, we haven't really covered this, right? But I thought I would talk about it for a minute because several of you on part 1, where it was like season or episode in season, you did quotes. And I'm not sure where, maybe the duck was suggesting it, which was, and the duck may not give you the right answer, by the way. But, tell us you're using it. But one thing I want to show you, I'm going to move over to my local setup here, and I have the database open, right? So if I do tables, right, I see I have episodes, so I have the Cyber Chase, but there is another thing called .schema that Carter has not covered yet, okay? But it is so good to know because what it will tell you is the data type. Now, we're going to get into this when we get into creating or what they call writing databases. But you can do this anyway to see. So that episode and season was an integer. So if you use a string there, even though it may, and this is a term you may not have heard called coercion, it actually might, SQL might go, oh, you know what, actually that probably, I can coerce that. But from a purely is it correct standpoint, it's not. It's syntactically correct, but it could be better. And that's sometimes the feedback I will give to queries is yes, it may be creating the right output. Like I think a common one for part one was that the last query 7 was asking for where it was fractions, and many of you only went after the topics and not the title, and it actually asked for both. Not a good example, but yeah, actually, no, it is a good example because that's one I gave you feedback. That's a common one I gave feedback on. Okay, so I talked a little bit about the technical interview, what it would look like. You know, again, it's going to look like the reviews that you're doing. So the more of that you do, the better. It does not hurt to do them more. So this week, here's what we're going to do. This is a prompt I've written, right? And basically, you're going to take this prompt and you're going to copy it. Okay, copy the whole thing. And you can definitely read it for sure. I'm taking a student taking an intro to SQL course, and we're focused on writing basic queries with the following commands. And I listed out all the commands. We're now working on word problems, and I'm given a problem, and I need to write SQL because here's the thing. And I won't have to read the whole thing because you can, but I'll go over some key pieces of what it will do. We've moved, right, in this last week to giving you word problems. Like, here's the problem, break it down, write a query. And this is definitely a step in our learning process, but it's something that I want to focus a little more consciously on this week by giving you some more ways to learn how to do it. So I thought, what a better thing than to use these Gen AI tools that we now have access to. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and do it, but I will highlight a couple of things. So first, it'll ask you if you have a data set. Like you could say whatever, you could have whatever kind of data. Maybe oh God, what would I say? What kind of collection, right? Maybe some kind of collecting thing that I do. Maybe my workouts, whatever. If you don't have one, just say I don't have one. It'll make up one for you, and then it'll go through the process of giving. It's like here's a problem. Now and the AI will tell you here's how I would break it down, right? And then it'll give you a variation of that and have you walk through that process and attempt the SQL. Okay. So the other thing, and this is how you prompt things to make it fun, although LLMs naturally on the way they're trained want to be fun and helpful, so which is often hard for those of us trying to contain it, not to give answers. Right, so I've given it, so anyway, let's just go here. So you're going to do this, and it's setting a timer of 10 minutes. So once you've interacted for 10 minutes with it, then right, what it's going to do is it's going to give me suggestions of what I could do to improve, right, or provide comments about my work. So now you do not have to in the reply paste your conversation. Most of these, and of course I'm going to use the most popular one here, right? Most of these will give you the ability to share, and you don't have to do that either, right? So in this case, this sounds like, if we jump in, I can say that's what it's asking you. Right? Do you have a data set? And let's say I say workouts, because it's something I do and I keep track of. Workout table. Okay, so here's the table. Now interesting. It actually gave you, in this case, create table, which we haven't seen before, right? So not a bad thing. You can tell what's in there, right? Filtering step by step. Good. So here's the problem, right? And then it gives you, here's how you break it down. Good. So this is the idea, right? You do this, it has a 10-minute timer, right? And then what you will do is in your reply, tell us if the prompt and your chosen Gen AI, right? If it, whatever tool you, and you can in the reply, tell us which one if you want, if it was helpful to you, right? Don't share the output of your conversation. Don't paste your conversation into the reply. It'll just create too much content in our discussion, right? Write 150 words, that's 80 points, and do one substantive reply. And again, try to find students who have not had replies to their post, okay? Because this is an important part of what you're learning, which is to take a problem, break it down, and some people can do it without even consciously realizing how they're doing it. And everybody's brain works differently. But the more you can kind of become conscious of how you approach these things, the better at it you will become. Okay? Again, this is supporting the idea of you giving, the proof of effort so that you're actually trying some things. And again, not that it's bad to go get help, but it's not good to go get help without trying. And this is intended to help give you that step to make it a little more conscious. Okay? All right. Hope you enjoy, and I look forward to your replies.